Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have an AFCON and Asian Cup strategy video with a specific focus on how the two tournaments will impact our FPL teams, focusing on Son and Salah. Should we sell them if at all? When might we need them back? And what potential blanks and doubles might affect when we bring them back as well? If you do get any use out of today's video, please do smash that like button. Make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, this is my first video of 2024, so I hope you have a cracking year ahead, and I'd love to know down below in the comments, what are your New Year's resolutions for the new year? But in today's video, what we're going to discuss is the Asian Cup and AFCON and how that might affect our FPL teams, and then take a specific focus on Son and Salah, because most of us have Son and Salah in our teams. Should we sell one or both? And if we do sell one or both, when might we want to bring them back into our teams, and how might that affect the use of funds when we wildcard, when we plan on playing our chips, and also future blanks and doubles may affect when we look to bring them back in as well. So this will be a fairly relaxed video. I'll try not to make it any longer than it needs to be, but hopefully by the end of it, you'll have a good idea of how these two tournaments will affect your FPL teams and when you'll want to bring Son and Salah back in. But very briefly, just to cover everything, these are the notable players in FPL and for people's teams that are off to the Asian Cup and AFCON. So for the Asian Cup, there are far fewer players that are actually off that will affect us, and I think the main two are Son and Hwang. Obviously, Matoma, if he's fit, currently an injury doubt along with Adingra, but if he's fit, he will be off to the Asian Cup. And then Tomiyasu and Endo are very important for Arsenal and for Liverpool, but maybe less so for our FPL team. So from the Asian Cup, the main two are Son and Hwang, and actually quite a few people do have Hwang now. I'm not really going to discuss the cheaper players in as much detail in this video because most people probably don't have much money tied up in them, which we'll actually discuss in one of the future sections. And also, I think there are so many other players you can move to at those price points. So if you have someone like a Hwang, I'd feel fairly comfortable just selling them. But obviously, Son is a notable one. A lot of people bought Son at a much cheaper price, and now he's quite expensive. So we do have to think about that. With AFCON, there are far more players that are going off to AFCON that may affect our FPL teams. But I would say that the main two are Salah and Kudus. Kudus, along with Hwang, quite highly owned now, and he's been performing very, very well for West Ham. And how Kudus' absence will affect Bowen, maybe we'll discuss that in a future video before the GAMEWEEK21 deadline. But Kudus is off to AFCON, and so is Salah. And there are other players on this list. You can actually go onto the BBC's website and Sky Sports as well. They've got full list of the players that are off to AFCON and the Asian Cup, and you can look within your team. If they're off to AFCON or the Asian Cup, they will currently be red flagged. And if they are probably a player that you'll look to remove, unless you can just tuck them as a third sub and you don't want to waste a transfer there. But for the focus of the video, and probably throughout this week now in the lead up to GameWeek21, we are going to focus on Son and Salah. So let's take a look at when they're off, when we might expect them back, and how that might influence our FPL teams. So in this section, we're going to take a quick look at when we think Salah and Son may be back in our FPL teams, or at least available again in FPL. And before I even get into that, whilst I have created the graphics myself for this video, they are heavily inspired / pretty much copied from FPL Poland over on Twitter. So you can see the credit on the screen. I want to give full credit to FPL Poland because the graphics were very, very useful, and I've pretty much just copied them here. And then also Rob T FPL, who created a lot of graphics which inspired FPL Poland's too. So full credit to those two for all of the brilliant graphics they've been making over on Twitter, and feel free to go and follow them to show your support as well. But what we've got here is basically the chance that they have of returning at each stage of the tournament based on the bookies' odds. So you've got, as you can see, the exit at the groups, round of 16, quarters, semis, finals, and then if they win the tournament, the dates are very similar for AFCON and for Asian Cup. You've then got the estimated return date as well, based on each of those different stages of the tournament. And then you've got the game week that is relevant to in FPL. So I'm not going to go through in tons of detail and discuss what I think is the likelihood, because in all honesty, I don't really know. I don't watch a massive amount of international football, especially AFCON and the Asian Cup. I do plan on watching a little bit more this year, but I can't say I'm very familiar with Egypt's and South Korea's chances of progressing in their tournaments. But basically what it looks like is the very longest that we'll go without these players is until Game Week 25, when they will probably return in Game Week 25. There is a small chance that that won't be until Game Week 26 if they go on a longer parade, or if their club gives them a little bit more time off. But it's looking like the longest we'll go without Salah and Son is Game Week 25. And as you can see, they have a 99% chance of returning in that game week. So if we use that as a worst case or even best case scenario, depending on which way you look at it, but that's the longest that we'll go without them. The shortest is, of course, they're back in Game Week 22. But as you can see, that is extremely unlikely for both. It would require them to get knocked out in the group stage, which again is very unlikely for both Egypt and South Korea, and also be straight back with their clubs with no break. So I think we can pretty much say with certainty, in my opinion at least, that Game Week 21 and Game Week 22 we will be without Son and Salah. So you've got 2 game weeks where you could potentially sell them, bring in someone else, and that player could get you points. It is also quite unlucky based on the bookies odds that they're available for game week 23. You can currently see a 35% chance for Salah and a 31% chance for Son. So definitely possible, and I wouldn't say that we expect them to definitely be unavailable for 23, but if we're going by the odds, more likely than not, they won't be available for game week 23. So that then means if we almost definitely don't have them for 21 and 22, and almost definitely do have them back for 26, 23 is unlikely that we'll have them back. It is, I think, according to most people, most bookies odds, likely that we will have Son and Salah back for either Game Week 24 or Game Week 25. And when it comes down to this, I mean, anything can happen in international tournaments. Would I be surprised to see them knocked out in the group stages? Definitely. But is it possible? Of course it is. So this is just based on the odds, but I would say it looks most likely at the moment that we'll get them back probably in Game Week 24, but if not 24, 25. So you are looking at 3 to 4 game weeks probably without Son and Salah in your teams, which actually isn't a massive amount. It's not like we're going to be without them for a very, very long period of time. So when you look at this, you think, I might actually only sell one. I might tuck the second one on my bench. And that was my first thought, was that you don't need to sell both of them, especially if you've already got, outside of these two, 6 other good attackers. Maybe you've got 4 good defenders, and there aren't tons of midfielders at the moment. We had a really long list at one point of midfielders we wanted to own, but now that list is shorter than it used to be. Maybe there aren't that many midfielders you want to go out and buy. Maybe you do just tuck one on your bench. And there are more reasons to want to do that potentially, as we'll discuss in the next section. But it is also probably a minimum of 2 or 3 game weeks where you can gain the points from another player. And yes, you might have someone, let's say for me, I've got Pau Torres on my bench. I could get away with benching one of these, and for the next 3 or 4 weeks, just playing Pau Torres. That could pay off. It really could if they keep 2 clean sheets. But would I rather bring in a midfielder who can get me 10, 12, 15 points in a single game week? Absolutely. So I still think the upside is there to sell them, but I just wanted to show you that we're probably looking at a return in either Game Week 24 or Game Week 25 for Salah and Son. So guys, you would have recently heard me talking about One Future Football, which is the world's first global virtual football league, and I've discussed their fantasy game in a lot of detail, and believe me, the fantasy game, in my opinion, is the best part about this project. But there is so much more to One Future Football, and I wanted to show you a little bit more about their website today and the different things that you can do alongside the fantasy game. So these are currently all of the players that I own, which is a combination of me buying some packs, but also winning the free and the pro version of the fantasy game. And as you can see now, which is quite a lot, I currently own 81 players. But the interesting thing is, and why I like it so much, is we can each influence how these players perform within One Future Football. If I train alongside you a player and we train them up together, you can actually improve the way they perform. So if I train up one of the players that I own and you also own that player, their performances will improve for you too. So today I'm going to show you the players that I'm going to train ahead of the upcoming round and then pick them in my pro fantasy game. So comfortably the best player in One Future Football, for me at least this season, has been Florian Grava. So what I'm going to do is click on Florian Grava, and as you can see at the moment, no one has recently changed him. The only thing that someone's trained him in is for some reason goalkeeping at 5%. But of course I don't want to train him as a goalkeeper, he is a striker. So I'm going to train his shooting all the way up to 100%. I've got a lot of points to use, so I'm going to max out his shooting, and hopefully that'll improve his performance in the upcoming round. So guys, I skipped that for the benefit of time, but as you can see, I've upgraded Florian Grava's shooting, which doesn't just account for me owning him. Everyone that owns Florian Grava will also have an upgrade in his shooting as well, and hopefully he'll perform well in the upcoming round. I've also trained up Albin Darlin's delivery. He's been getting a lot of assists recently, and I want that to continue, especially given the very, very good fixture that he's got coming up in the upcoming round. And then finally, guys, as you can see, I've actually trained up Alex Lyon's possession and defense because he's the engine room of that midfield for Angelinos, and he's going to be in my pro team for the upcoming round. So guys, as I've spoken about a few times, there is a free fantasy game and a pro fantasy game. You can play the pro game once you own 5 players. You can either get that by winning or placing in the top 3 for the free game, or you can buy a pack. If you do buy a pack, I'm not saying you have to, but if you want to, there is a code down below, Raptor10, will get you 10% off. But I'm going to show you my pro team now for the upcoming round. So guys, as you can see, this is my team for the upcoming round, round 17. The deadline is at 11:30 PM UK time on Friday. So if you see this before then, you can of course enter your team or enter your team for the following round as well. I am backing Angelinos to do very well, which is why I have Darlin and Leon in my team with Darlin captain. If you do play One Future Football, let me know who you have in your team for round 17. So as I see it, there are two major benefits to not selling Salah and Son. The first being that you save 2 transfers on each of them because you have to take them out, but you will almost definitely want, especially Salah, but probably Son, you want them back in when they do come back. Maybe not immediately. Again, we'll discuss why that might be the case in a bit, but you are going to want them back. So you are saving, if you don't sell either, 4 transfers, but if you don't sell 1, you are saving 2 transfers. So that is the first thing. You can see my team on the screen at the moment. I could get away really with selling neither. I could just play this very suboptimal looking 4-3-3, but I would like to sell 1. But I can just show you as an example. I just bench Taylor, sell Salah. I don't really need to sell Son. And then it gets to game week 22 and you think, well, then that's 1 game week closer to having him back. There is the potential benefit of just saving the transfers. But the other reason, and the reason I'm on the FPL site at the moment, is about having money tied up in a player. Now, this can sometimes get a little bit tricky to explain, so I'm going to explain it to you, but I'm going to try and show you on the FPL site where you can see this for yourself in your teams as well. So you will have often heard me say, I have money tied up in a player. And what that means is the price that you buy a player by, if they go up in price, the price you can sell them at is not their current price that you would then buy them back at. So as an example, if I just go to, I can show you how to do this, by the way. If you go to transfers, then once you're on your transfers page, ignore the site lagging out. If you go to list rather than pitch view, so if you go to list, there's a little button at the top there. You can see the purchase price, which is here. That's the price that you bought the player at. You can see their selling price, and you can see their current price as well. Now, for a player like, I don't know, who's a good example? I bought Taylor at 3.9. He's currently 4. I can sell him for 3.9. You can see, well, why can't I sell him for 4 then? If I bought him at 3.9 and he's 4, why can't I sell him for 4? And that is because you only gain 0.1 million for every 0.2 a player rises in price when you own them. So just as a hypothetical example, if I buy a player at 10 million and they rise to 10.2 million, I can only sell them for 10.1. I gain 50% of the profit in that player. Where that then becomes tricky if they go up an odd number. So if I buy a player at 10 million, and they go up to 10.5, I can actually only sell them for 10.2 because you can't get 10.2.5, right? So you only gain half, and obviously if it's an odd number, you're on the lesser half of that half, on the lesser side of that half. So the players that are in question here are Salah and Son. Unless you bought them very, very recently, it's almost guaranteed that you'll have money tied up in them. That being the price that you sell them at now will not be the price that you buy them at the future. So for Salah, I bought Salah at 12.5 million. He's now 13.2 million, which means I can sell him for 12.8 million because he's gone up 0.7. So I have gained 0.3 million in profit. The first thing to note is if Salah goes down to 13.1, that actually doesn't affect my selling price, right? Because then I would still gain 0.3. So this is how I can sell sometimes. If he falls in price, it doesn't affect me at all. I can still sell for the 12.8. But the other thing to note that means then, let's say he does drop to 13.1, but I sell him for 12.8. I sell him for 12.8 now. I want to buy him back for 13.1 in, let's say, game week 25. I will lose, technically, 0.3 million because I would have to sell him for 12.8 now and I would buy him back at 13.1 in the future. The same situation, unfortunately for me, because I got on him quite early, some of you got on a little bit later, which might make it easier to sell him, is with Son. So I bought Son at 9.1. He has also gone up 0.7, so he's now 9.8, which means I can sell for 9.4. So to summarize that, if I were to sell Salah and Son both right now, I would then gain 0.3 million based on my purchase price. And then when I bought them both back, assuming they only fall another 0.1, I would lose, technically, 0.6 million in those two assets. So that is a lot of money. And what that means is, firstly, you are losing money, but also the route that you want to bring them straight back into your team might not be as easy as you first think it is. It's not just a matter of selling them and then going straight back to them. If you're going with a similar structure in your team, you'd have to find an extra 0.6 out of nowhere. If you're also using that money to then move to an Erling Haaland, well, then all of a sudden it becomes even trickier because not only have you brought in another premium asset, you've also lost 0.6. So I would encourage you to look ahead if you are looking at selling them, but take into account that you will have less money than you currently do, and that selling them, you're going to have to buy them back at a more expensive price. So that section was probably significantly more confusing than I wanted it to be, but basically, the price that you sell them at now will be cheaper than the price that you have to buy them back at in the future, and do take that into account when you're considering selling them or not selling them. So we've discussed that we're likely to get Salah and Son back in either Game Week 24 or Game Week 25, but it could be as early as 23, and I suppose it could be as late as 26. But unfortunately, the confusion and decision-making doesn't stop there, because we have a probable/potential double Game Week 25 and blank Game Week 26. And that is both for Liverpool and for Spurs. And this revolves around the EFL Cup final. So if Chelsea beat Middlesbrough, which is the the EFL Cup semi-final, and Liverpool beat Fulham, which is the other EFL Cup semi-final, and of course Chelsea are favourites to beat Middlesbrough and Liverpool are favourites to beat Fulham, that would make a Liverpool versus Chelsea final, which takes place during Game Week 26, which would create a blank Game Week 26 for Liverpool, Luton, Chelsea and Spurs. Now, we'll discuss in the future the potential ramifications that might have for like free hits and stuff like that. I will briefly mention it here. But for the sake of Salah and Son, what that means is if the two favourites do go through to the AFL Cup final, both Salah and Son will blank in Game Week 26. So if we don't get them back until 25, and then they blank in 26, the immediate thought process is we'll just go without them for 24/25. They don't play in 26 anyway. Maybe it's 27 we look at bringing them in. But then they could even blank in Game Week 29, which we'll discuss. So it's not as easy as just saying that they come straight back into our team, because progression in the EFL Cup and then the FA Cup for Game Week 29 will affect when we want to bring them back in. So this kind of encourages us to sell them. Because, number one, you get the points of the players that you bring in instead, but also it may be that you don't even want them back in for Game Week 24, 25. Maybe you don't even want them in for 27 and 28 in case they blank in 29, especially in Salah's case. So this, encourages us to potentially look to sell them. The unfortunate spanner in the works there is that it is predicted if the Liverpool-Luton fixture is a blank in Game Week 26, i.e. if Liverpool do beat Fulham, it is very, very likely that that fixture will then go into Game Week 25. Which would mean that Liverpool have a double Game Week 25 of Brentford and Luton, which is something you have to have Salah for. And probably other Liverpool assets as well. But definitely you would want Salah. He's the best captaincy option there. As long as, of course, he is available for 25. There is a chance that he misses 25. So there's a lot of if, buts and maybes here. But this would just be a real issue. Let's say he's back in 24, but he blanks in 26. And you've got one fixture in 24 and then a double in 25, followed by a blank in 26. And let's say Liverpool do progress in the FA Cup and they actually blank in 29. That makes it very tricky because you've got 24, 25, 27, 28, but you don't have him for 26 or 29. And this is when chip strategy comes in because you've got the wild card, you've got the free hit. So maybe you start thinking about in 25 or 26, maybe I look at playing my free hit or wild card to help me out. And there are two strategies here that you could equally play with your free hit. The first is that in Game Week 25, you decide to free hit, which allows you to get Salah in, which means you don't have to then worry about bringing Salah in. Because let's say you free it in 25 time as captain, in 26 he blanks, you wouldn't need Salah back until 27 anyway. The other way that you could do it is actually bring Salah in 24 or 25, free hit in the blank game week when he doesn't play, and then he's back in your team for 27. So I'm not suggesting that 25 or 26 will be the best week to free hit. In fact, the biggest blank game week of the season will be Game Week 29, almost definitely, if not guaranteed. So that's probably also a decent week to free hit. But I am just saying you could get around this issue of Salah potentially doubling in 25 and blanking in 26 by utilising the free hit. Or maybe you just bring him in for the double and then just bench him for the blank. And just hope that the rest of your players are okay. But let's be honest, if Liverpool, Chelsea and Spurs all blank, count in your teams now. I've got Trent, I've got Darwin, I've got Palmer, I've got Porro, I've got Son, who I might sell, but I'm looking at bringing in a Spurs midfielder. I might potentially have, especially if Nkunku becomes an option, I could have 6 or 7 blank Game Week 26 assets. So this is going to be something that's worth monitoring. Unfortunately, we won't know this before the Game Week 21 deadline. We'll have a bit of an idea because the first leg of the semi-final is before the 21 deadline, but the second leg, I think, is on the 23rd and 24th of Jan, which is just before the Game Week 22 deadline. So by the Game Week 22 deadline, we will know about blank Game Week 26 and potentially double Game Week 25. But this is just to throw a bit more confusion in there that I suppose for me, this tells me I probably don't need to bring Salah straight back into my team if there's a good chance he blanks in 26. If I do want to, well, then I can potentially take it, or I could free hit in 25. But this just gives me one more fixture that obviously Salah won't be available in our teams. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if that changes your thinking at all around Salah and Son. So I thought a good way to finish this video would just be going through my current plan around Salah, Son, and also Erling Haaland. And I should note, at the time of me recording this, there have been lots of photos of Erling Haaland in training, and the general consensus is that he will be available for Game Week 21 against Newcastle. Available could be in the squad on the bench. It could be starting and getting 90. It could be getting the first half. I don't yet know that, but I don't think that's directly relevant or important right now, because I think you can create two different strategies based on if you want him in 21 or if you don't. Unfortunately, I've got a feeling that I probably won't have him in 21 regardless of the update. And I know that sounds crazy considering he is probably the best captain if he's available. I think the best route for my team may well be to go without Haaland in 21 and to bring him in 22. But the way that Newcastle played against Liverpool, maybe that's a silly decision. I might second guess that potentially if we get confirmation that he's available. But anyway, this is the way that my team currently looks for Game Week 21. And what I've done is I've put Son on the bench because I think for me, I've got an equal amount of money tied up in each of them. And Salah is the most expensive one. And it just gives me more money and flexibility moving forward to sell Salah than Son. I think I'll end up selling both, which we'll discuss in a second. But I think priority-wise, if I'm only going to sell one this week, it probably is Salah. Now, let's say that Haaland is available for 21 and I do want to sell him. It would be for Alvarez. I think Darwin, in the absence of Salah, might get slightly more minutes, but also in general, he has looked very good recently. And I know he's not finishing his chances, but I think Darwin is a better asset than Alvarez, especially once Haaland's back, and also KDB's back in training. Doku looks like he could be available soon as well. I've already got Foden. I just don't think I'm going to get enough starts from my City players, and especially with Haaland back, I think I'd rather have him than Alvarez. So I don't want to sell Darwin, I want to sell Watkins. So let's say I do bring in Haaland in 21. Let's say that he is in fact available. I bring Haaland in for Alvarez, which unfortunately only gives me enough for a £6 million asset at the time of me recording. And remember, I only have one free transfer. So this unfortunately rules out Bowen. It rules out Richarlison. It rules out some of the other midfielders we might potentially want. But it does give me Erling Haaland for a hit. And it does make my team strong enough. It's not like I look at my team here and it's terrible. And so I think there is the possibility if Haaland is 100% confirmed. Like, we've seen him in full training for like a week and he just looks really, really fit and Pep's really positive, then maybe I'll go for it because I don't see many standout captaincy options. In a normal week, if we had Salah there as an option, I would just say, I don't need Haaland this week, I'll captain Salah, but I'm going to be captaining someone like a Darwin, Saka or Palmer, and that feels terrible. So I think if Haaland is confirmed, I'll probably have to go there and bring him in for 21. But if there are any doubts around whether he starts or not, maybe I won't risk it. Like, if I wouldn't feel comfortable giving him the armband, I don't think I would make the move. The players that I'm currently considering at the moment, if I am to obviously make that move, I've got up to 6 million. Eze and Elise are both options. Now, at time of me recording, looks like Elise could be injured. If he is, Eze becomes a really nice option. He's exactly 6. So that does require me, if I just move to the midfielders, that does require me to have no negative price changes in my team. But Eze could be an option, but the absence of Elise, I think, negatively affects him. The other player that I'm considering around that price is maybe like a Brennan Johnson at 5.8, because that gives me another Spurs attacker. In the absence of Son, I expect him to play pretty much every minute alongside Richarlison and Kulusevski. So it would probably be something like a Brennan Johnson in there, and that would be that the way the team looks going into that game week. But I mean, ideally, there are some doubts around Haaland, and I'm not forced to bring him in, because if I just bring that back now and put Alvarez back in, the other move that I could make with my one free transfer, which feels really good, obviously, for the fixture that he's got, is just to bring Jared Bowen in for Salah. That still gives me 4.8 million. It moves me closer to where I need to be regarding bringing Haaland back in, and you could argue if Haaland isn't available or is a bit of a doubt as to whether he starts, we don't feel comfortable giving him the armband, maybe the best captaincy option of the game week, which is Jared Bowen. So let me make the transfers. I would argue he is. I mean, his away form has been fantastic this season. I think he's only blanked in 1 or maybe 2 away games. The only issue around Bowen is Sheffield United improved quite a bit under Wilder, and also we don't know how the absence of, if Paquetá's out and also maybe Kudus obviously not being available, how that might affect him, because he didn't have a single shot in game week 20. And he didn't have a single shot in game week 19 either. He's had 0 XG across the last 2. So we'll discuss Bowen throughout the week, because he's obviously a transfer that a lot of people want to make. But maybe it gives me a slightly better option for 21, because that is still a really, really nice fixture. The interesting thing is, I don't actually think my transfer plans will change for 21 and 22. I think there are 3 players that I'll end up bringing in, or 3 moves that I'll end up making. And I think it's just in what order I do them. Because I want to bring in Bowen. I want to bring in Haaland, and then I'll bring in another midfielder for Son. So it's just the route that I want to do that. Do I just make one move this week, do Salah to a midfielder, and then in 22, let's say I do that, right? Bowen in for Salah. Really nice move. Then in 22, I'd probably still take out Son and bring in another midfielder, whoever that may be. And I would then bring in Haaland. So let's say that I did the Bowen move instead. In comes Haaland. And then that would then give me 2.1 that I would need to find. So I have a bit of wiggle room then on the Son move. I've got 7.3. Now, I suppose the only difference is rather than Brennan Johnson here or an Elise Aranese, I would probably then be going for Richarlison, which is slightly better for me. I'd have a bit of a benching headache, but it would probably be that Richarlison comes in, once I make that move, in for Palmer. So that would probably be the team then going into 22. So I do want Haaland back in. Don't worry, I'm not going to do what I did in Game Week 8 and go without him for a long spell. He will be coming in. It's just whether I do that in 21 or 22. Sadly, due to only having one free transfer and no money in the bank, if I want to do it in 21, it means going without Bowen for a week. If I want to do it in 22... I want to do it in 22, then I can, of course, bring in Bowen for 21. So I suppose it comes down to how much do I want to bring in Haaland for 21, and how much do I think going without Bowen for a week might potentially damage me, because his EO is going to continue shooting up. So hopefully that video has been useful. Let me know down below in the comments what your current route is back to Haaland if you have one. What is your plan for Salah and Son whilst away at AFCON and the Asian Cup? Of course, throughout the coming week now, I'm going to discuss a lot of other things around Son and Salah replacements. I mean, that will be the key question throughout the week. So I will discuss all of that in a lot more detail. And I'll also give you my final opinion on what I'm doing for Game Week 21 as well. So guys, there you have it. That is my AFCON and Asian Cup strategy video discussing what we're going to do with Salah and Son, when we expect them back and how that might affect your FPL team. Slightly different video today. And if you are still watching at this point, please do smash that like button. Drop a comment down below to feed those algorithm gods. And make sure to subscribe as well. We are trying to hit 110,000 subscribers and I would really appreciate your support. Until next time, which will probably be, I'd imagine, a transfer plans video. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.